I woke up to my alien maid cuddling me. Her reason left me speechless. He woke to warmth. Not the regulated, even warmth of the climate-controlled apartment, but a close, concentrated heat radiating against his back. A weight pressed against him, not uncomfortable, but undeniably present. Panic seized him before he even opened his eyes. His wife, Sarah, was on a research trip to Proxima Centauri b, scheduled to be gone for another month. He hadn't even considered setting the auto-lock on his bedroom door. He cracked an eye open, silvery blue skin, almost luminescent in the dim light filtering through the energy blinds. Xylo. Her long, flowing cerulean hair, usually neatly braided, was loose and tangled, a few strands resting on his shoulder. One of her forearms was draped possessively across his chest. He froze, every muscle tense. He hadn't moved an inch since waking, but Xylo stirred. One of her other hands, normally hidden beneath the folds of her uniform, tightened its grip on his arm. Her breathing deepened. He needed to get out of this. Now, slowly, painstakingly, he began to disentangle himself. He peeled her arm off his chest. A difficult feat, given the surprisingly strong grip. Her skin was smooth, cool to the touch, a stark contrast to the heat radiating from her body. He shifted, inching away until he was at the edge of the bed, the chill of the room a welcome relief. He stood, heart hammering against his ribs. Xylo remained asleep, her expression serene, almost innocent. He backed away, putting as much distance between them as possible. He grabbed his discarded clothes from the floor, pulling them on with jerky movements. He needed to confront her, but not here, not while she was still vulnerable, still entangled. He found her in the kitchen an hour later, calmly preparing a nutrient-paced breakfast. She was fully dressed, her hair neatly braided, the picture of composed efficiency. There was no trace of the intimacy of the morning. He cleared his throat. "Xylo, we need to talk." She turned, her large, iridescent eyes widening slightly. "Is there something I can assist you with, Master John?" The formal address grated on his nerves. "Don't call me that." "And yes, there is. About this morning." Her expression didn't change. "This morning, Master John, I prepared your breakfast precisely as you requested. Is there something wrong with the nutrient blend?" "It's not about the breakfast. It's about finding you in my bed." A flicker of something, surprise, confusion, crossed her face, but it vanished so quickly he almost missed it. "I apologize if my presence caused you any distress, John. It was merely the nocturnal bonding ritual." He stared at her, dumbfounded. "Nocturnal? Bonding ritual? What in the world are you talking about?" "It is a customary practice amongst the Zilonians, essential for fostering trust and strengthening the bond between servant and master. During sleep cycles, proximity allows for the exchange of subconscious energies, creating a deeper understanding and facilitating efficient service. I believed you were aware." Her tone was utterly neutral, devoid of any hint of emotion. He ran a hand through his hair, his head spinning. "Aware? Xylo? I didn't sign up for any bonding ritual. This is my bedroom. It's a private space, and quite frankly, it's completely inappropriate." Her iridescent eyes narrowed slightly. "Inappropriate? But the manual clearly states, manuals are for vacuuming and laundry, not for crawling into my bed in the middle of the night." He struggled to keep his voice down, not wanting to alert the neighbors. "I respect your culture, Xylo, but this is my house, and I need you to respect my boundaries. No more nocturnal bonding, understood?" She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "But the lack of bonding could compromise my ability to provide optimal service. It may lead to a decline in efficiency, misunderstandings even, dissatisfaction." "Dissatisfaction?" he echoed, a shiver running down his spine. "My satisfaction is not your concern, Xylo. My personal space is. This is non-negotiable." She was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on him. The air in the kitchen felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. Finally she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "As you wish, John. I will comply with your request. But please understand, this may have unforeseen consequences." He didn't like the way she said that. "What kind of consequences?" She looked away, towards the window, where the twin suns of Kepler 186 were beginning to rise, consequences that are inherent to the Zalonian social structure, consequences that I am not at liberty to fully disclose. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had a feeling he was about to step into a much bigger mess than he had anticipated. This bonding ritual clearly went deeper than just some harmless cultural quirk. He had put his foot down, asserting his boundaries, but had he inadvertently triggered something he couldn't control? He watched her, his mind racing. He wanted to trust her, but everything about this situation felt wrong. He was trapped between his own cultural sensibilities and the bewildering and potentially dangerous customs of an alien race. And he had a sinking feeling that Sarah's research trip was about to get a whole lot longer. The Zalonian Code. Stripes of dawn crept across John's face, courtesy of the cheap blinds and the rising sun. Xylo's pronouncements reverberated in his skull. The Zalonian Code demands closeness. Less a profound cultural tenet, more like dialogue lifted from a B-movie space opera. And the kicker? This was the justification for why his extraterrestrial housekeeper had been spooning him while Sarah, his wife, was circling Mars on business. He flung back the duvet, a shiver tracing his spine despite the climate control. This Zalonian Code demanded investigation. He lurched towards his study, the familiar whir of the computer a small solace in the hushed morning. A quick search for Zalonian customs unleashed a torrent of results, scholarly articles, travel vlogs, and some decidedly disturbing fetish content. He waded through the digital swamp, feeling his initial confusion deepening into outright dismay. Hours evaporated. Bloodshot eyes now scanned a chaotic collage of suppositions and outright lies, coalescing into a vague, unsettling picture. Zalonian culture, it appeared, placed paramount importance on closeness and communal experience, the twin pillars of trust and social harmony. Touch, apparently, transcended mere physical contact. It was a sophisticated language of empathy and motive. One particularly dubious source claimed nocturnal familiarization rituals were de rigueur, especially in hierarchical relationships, to secure allegiance and preempt any defiance. John felt a primal unease crawl beneath his skin. An aroma, singularly peculiar, drifted from the kitchen. He cautiously investigated, finding Xylo humming an unrecognizable tune amidst a culinary tableau straight out of a fever dream. Slices of iridescent plum-colored fruit sat beside a bowl brimming with writhing, glassy noodles and a fried egg sporting an unsettlingly emerald yolk. "Good morning, John." Xylo warbled, her antennae a-quiver. "I have prepared a traditional Zalonian breakfast. It is designed to stimulate the senses and optimize digestion." She presented him with a plate, a carefully constructed arrangement of the alien delicacies. The scent alone sent a wave of nausea washing over him. He prodded the fruit cautiously. The taste was a jarring blend of lavender and gasoline. "Xylo," he began, striving for composure. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm not entirely convinced my digestive system is ready for interstellar cuisine. Perhaps we could explore some more terrestrial options going forward." Xylo's cheerful chirp faltered. "But the code requires me to prioritize your well-being in all aspects." "I understand that, Xylo, truly. But my well-being actively precludes consuming things that appear to have been dredged from a radioactive bog." He mustered a feeble smile. "Look, about last night, this nocturnal familiarization ritual. I appreciate that it's ingrained in your culture, however, where I come from, it's highly inappropriate between an employer and their help." He hesitated, searching for the delicate phrasing. "I need you to understand that while I value your assistance, and I respect your traditions, I also need you to respect my personal space. No more nocturnal familiarization. Agreed?" The light usually dancing in Xylo's eyes dimmed. "But failure to uphold the code could lead to a compromised purpose. Your purpose is to assist me with the household, Xylo, not to snuggle me while I sleep. This is something you need to grasp." He straightened, attempting to project an authority he far from felt. "Henceforth, we will observe a professional distance. Am I understood?" She inclined her head slowly, her antennae drooping slightly. "Understood, John, However, the development of trust will be a more prolonged process. He swallowed hard, a stab of guilt piercing through him. We'll cultivate trust in other ways, Xylo, I promise. He manufactured a reassuring smile. Now, about that Earth-friendly breakfast, how does toast sound? Sarah's absence. The static crackled for a moment before Sarah's face swam into view, framed by the sterile white walls of her research lab. She was radiant, even through the compressed feed, her eyes bright with that almost manic energy he knew so well, the energy that meant she was on the cusp of a breakthrough. It used to thrill him. Now, it just felt distant. "Hey," he said, trying to inject enthusiasm into his voice. Xylo stood silently behind him, her presence a warm, almost unnerving reassurance. Sarah barely glanced at him. "John? Hey, sorry, things are crazy here. We've got some incredible preliminary data on the Zidonian enzyme pathways." "You wouldn't believe." She launched into a rapid-fire explanation of protein synthesis and cellular degradation, a torrent of scientific jargon that washed over him. He nodded occasionally, pretending to follow, but the truth was, he felt like he was watching a television program in a language he didn't understand. "That's amazing, honey," he managed when she finally paused for breath. "So, when do you think you'll be back?" She frowned slightly, her brow furrowing. "Hard to say. The funding for this phase is contingent on publishing these results, so we're pushing hard. Probably another week, maybe 2. A week, or 2, an eternity." "Right," he said, the word feeling flat. "Okay, just miss you." Sarah's expression softened, a flicker of genuine affection crossing her face. "Miss you too, sweetie. Tell Xylo I said hi." She blew him a kiss, a gesture that felt strangely performative, and then she was gone, her image replaced by the sterile emptiness of the comm screen. He sat there for a moment, the silence in the apartment suddenly amplified. Xylo stepped forward, her large, obsidian eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. Without a word, she placed a warm, 3-fingered hand on his shoulder, the light pressure sending a surprising wave of comfort through him. "Thank you, Xylo," he murmured, leaning slightly into her touch. Later that evening, after a dinner Xylo had prepared with meticulous care, a fragrant blend of Terran and Xylosian spices that somehow managed to be both familiar and exotic, he found himself sitting on the balcony, staring out at the glittering cityscape. He was supposed to be working on the grant proposal that was already 3 weeks overdue, but his mind was a blank. Xylo appeared beside him, offering a small, steaming cup. Heavy in tea, it is said to soothe the spirit. He took the cup, the warmth seeping into his hands. The aroma was earthy and calming. "Thanks," he said again, feeling a pang of guilt at his constant need to express gratitude. She was just doing her job, after all. He took a sip, the tea surprisingly pleasant. "You know," he said, almost to himself, "Sarah and I, we used to be inseparable. We met in grad school, bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams. We thought we knew everything about each other." He paused, gazing out at the city lights. "My dad, he died when I was in my last year. It was sudden, a heart attack. I was lost. Sarah was amazing. She held me together. But, I don't know. Since she's been so focused on her research, it feels like he died all over again. But this time, she doesn't notice." He took another sip of the tea, the silence stretching between them. He hadn't meant to tell her all of that. It felt vulnerable. He braced himself for a platitude, a generic expression of sympathy. Instead, Xylo simply said, "Loss is a difficult journey." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "On Xylos, we believe grief is a sacred space, a time for quiet reflection and communal support." He looked at her, surprised. "Communal support?" She nodded. "Yes, we share our memories, our pain. We offer solace through shared rituals. We sing songs of remembrance. It is believed that by sharing the burden, it becomes lighter." He stared at her, seeing something in her eyes he hadn't noticed before, a deep well of empathy, a profound understanding of the human condition. He wasn't sure why, but he felt an overwhelming urge to tell her more, to delve deeper into the grief he had kept bottled up for so long. He didn't, not then, but the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the empty, isolating silence he had been feeling all week. It was a silence filled with a strange, unexpected sense of connection. A connection forged not through shared language or similar experiences, but through a shared understanding of the universal pain of loss. And, in that moment, John felt less alone than he had in a very long time. Blurred lines. The knot in John's shoulders tightened with each keystroke. Another rejection email pinged into his inbox, another grant proposal lost in the bureaucratic void. He rubbed his temples, the metallic tang of stress clinging to his tongue. "You seem agitated, John," Xylo observed, her voice a low, soothing hum. She stood in the doorway of his study, her multi-hued eyes reflecting the dim light. "The Zalonians have a method for relieving tension. Would you permit me to demonstrate?" John hesitated. The last time Xylo offered a Zalonian custom, he'd nearly choked on fermented kelp paste. "What exactly does this method involve?" Xylo tilted her head, her iridescent hair shimmering like captured starlight. "It is a form of tactile therapy. I apply pressure to key meridian points to release blocked energy." "A massage?" John clarified, picturing the overly enthusiastic back rubs his aunt used to give at family gatherings. "An approximation," Xylo conceded. "However, it is performed with significantly greater focus." She stepped closer, her scent, a blend of ozone and blooming night flowers, filling the small space. John swallowed. I don't know, Xylo. I'm not really comfortable with." "You are in pain," she interrupted, her voice firm but gentle, "and I am capable of alleviating it. It is a simple exchange. You permit me to assist you, and I gain valuable insight into human physiology." He glanced at the stack of rejection emails, then back at Xylo. The ache in his shoulders throbbed with renewed intensity. "All right," he relented, "but keep it professional, okay?" Xylo's expression didn't change, but he sensed a flicker of something akin to amusement in her eyes. She led him to the living room, directing him to lie face down on the plush rug. He closed his eyes, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. The massage itself was unsettlingly effective. Xylo's touch was firm and deliberate, her multifaceted fingers finding knots he didn't even know existed. She applied pressure with a precision that bordered on clinical, yet there was an undeniable intimacy to the contact. He found himself relaxing despite his reservations, the tension slowly melting away under her skilled hands. He even started to doze off for a few minutes before waking up with a jolt. Later that evening, drawn by a faint melodic humming, John wandered into the conservatory. The air was thick with the scent of exotic plants and damp earth. In the center of the room, bathed in the ethereal glow of bioluminescent orchids, stood Xylo. She was unclothed, her skin shimmering in the dim light, her eyes closed. She held a small, intricately carved instrument to her lips, the humming emanating from the instrument in her chest. John froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was clearly a private moment, something sacred. He should leave, he knew, but he was rooted to the spot, mesmerized by the scene. The humming intensified, then morphed into a series of complex melodic phrases. Xylo swayed gently, her movements fluid and graceful, like a plant swaying in an underwater current. He realized she was performing some kind of Zalonian ritual, an intimate and vulnerable act she was sharing with the night, with the plants, with whatever gods she might believe in. He finally found his feet and quietly retreated, his face burning with embarrassment and a strange sense of intrusion. The next morning, John found Xylo meticulously polishing the silverware. He cleared his throat. "Xylo, about last night?" She stopped polishing and looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, John. I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't realize you were engaged in private devotions," she finished, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "It is of no consequence. The spirits are not easily offended." John shifted uncomfortably. "Right. Well, I just wanted to apologize for barging in." Xylo resumed polishing, her movements precise and economical. After a long silence, she suddenly said, "You looked bewildered." John frowned. "Bewildered?" Like a hatchling who has stumbled into a nest of sun vipers. He couldn't help it. He burst out laughing, the tension of the past few days finally breaking. Xylo watched him, a curious expression on her face. Her lips twitched, and a moment later, she joined in, her laughter a series of high-pitched, melodic chimes. The sound filled the kitchen, chasing away the shadows of awkwardness and misunderstanding. For the first time since she had arrived, John felt a genuine connection with Xylo, a shared moment of lightness and camaraderie. He realized that beneath the alien customs and the cultural differences, there was a person, dedicated to her duties, and capable of surprising him in ways he never expected. He was beginning to see the lines were more blurred than he had initially thought. Forbidden feelings. John woke with a jolt, the lingering warmth of the dream clinging to him like morning mist. Xylo. They were dancing. Not the formal, stilted dances he'd seen on old Earth holovids, but something primal, connected. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed softly, mirroring the frantic beat of his own heart even now. He could almost feel the brush of her antennae against his cheek, the intoxicating scent of ozone and something sweetly floral emanating from her scales. He scrubbed a hand across his face, the rough texture of his beard grounding him in reality. It was just a dream, a stupid, hormone-fueled dream. He glanced at the chrono on his wrist. He was up before his wife, Sarah, a rare occurrence. Usually, her internal clock, honed by years of planetary exploration, woke her before the dawn. He slipped out of bed, the cool air a welcome contrast to the heat still radiating from his skin. He needed coffee, and a long, cold shower. The scent of synth cinnamon already permeated the kitchen. Xylo was there, humming a low, resonant melody as she prepped breakfast. He froze in the doorway, a wave of something washing over him. It wasn't just attraction, though that was certainly present. It was something deeper, a connection he couldn't explain, couldn't justify. He forced a casual tone. "Morning, Xylo, you're up early." She turned, her multifaceted eyes sparkling. "Good morning, Master John. Sarah, wife sleeps longer this cycle. I prepare nutri-paste and caffeinated beverage." Her antennae twitched, a subtle movement he was beginning to recognize as a sign of, what? Amusement? Nervousness? He grabbed a mug from the dispenser, avoiding her gaze. "Just coffee for me, thanks," he mumbled, adding, "Big day of, inventory." He hated lying, especially to her. He spent the rest of the morning avoiding her. He busied himself with tasks that didn't need doing, rearranging tools in the workshop, meticulously cleaning his datapad screen, anything to avoid being alone with her. The guilt gnawed at him. Sarah trusted her implicitly. He trusted her. He couldn't trust himself. He finally found her in the hydroponics bay, tending to the glowing fungi Sarah cultivated for their medicinal properties. The air was thick with humidity and the earthy aroma of the fungi. "Xylo," he began, his voice rough. We need to talk." She straightened, her antennae drooping slightly. "Is there a problem, Master John?" He hesitated. How could he explain the turmoil raging inside him without sounding like a complete idiot, or worse, a cheater? I've been thinking. Brilliant." She waited patiently, her gaze unwavering. He took a deep breath. I think I'm starting to feel something for you, something I shouldn't feel." The words hung in the air, heavy and shameful. Her expression didn't change, but her luminescence intensified, casting an ethereal glow on her scales. "I have also experienced this, Master John." He stared at her, dumbfounded. You have?" She tilted her head, a gesture that seemed both innocent and infinitely wise. "Xylonian relationships are fluid, Master John, not constrained by the same societal structures as humans. Close bonds, emotional intimacy, these are valued, encouraged, regardless of formal mating rituals. Sarah wife is aware of this Xylonian tendency." His head spun. "But marriage, commitment, it's supposed to be exclusive." "Exclusive in reproductive function, yes," Xylo said softly, "but not necessarily exclusive in emotional connection. Xylonians believe strong bonds across the species strengthens the community. Sarah wife desired Xylonian help for her home, and desired to help a Xylonian in turn. She understands I bond with others, and others bond with me." He ran a hand through his hair. This was not the conversation he expected. He had anticipated awkward apologies, denials, maybe even tears. Not a philosophical discourse on the nature of love and fidelity. "So, what are you saying?" he asked, the question barely a whisper. Xylo stepped closer, her antennae brushing his arm. The contact sent a shiver down his spine. "I am saying that I value your companionship, Master John. I enjoy our conversations, our shared tasks. I feel a connection. And I believe Sarah Wife would not want us to suppress those feelings. But I am not here to cause strife. If my affections are unwanted, I will, of course, respect your boundaries." Cultural catastrophe. Xylar, the Zalonian ambassador, materialized onto the observation deck, shimmering like a mirage on parched earth. His indigo hide, usually a serene, deep blue, throbbed with agitated hues of lilac. A guest of honor brought in by the Interstellar Council to foster unity, he was met by John, who'd been burning the midnight oil to make a stellar impression. He'd immersed himself in Zalonian lore, cognizant of their emphasis on touch, a continuous reassurance of communal harmony. Yet, he also understood that any deliberate misinterpretation of these gestures could carry profound insult, a stark rejection of their societal core. Xylar drew closer, his trifaceted eyes blinking in what John hoped conveyed amicable curiosity. "Commander Harrison," the ambassador's voice rumbled, a deep resonance that vibrated through the deck plating. "A distinct pleasure to finally encounter the human responsible for," he paused, the indigo of his skin deepening, "for the station's unique approach to hydroponics." John gave a nervous chuckle, the fertilizer bomb incident in Sector Gamma still fresh in his mind. "Unique indeed, Ambassador. We're still cultivating a solution, but it's all organic now, I assure you." Xylar's countenance remained stoic. John's mind raced. He needed to demonstrate receptiveness, to show that Zalonian culture wasn't merely a matter of tolerance, but one of genuine embrace. He recalled the Cathar, a light shoulder press, a gesture of respect among the lower castes, signaling a desire for continued rapport. It was the underling to the Zu Glorg, a full-bodied embrace reserved for bonded partners or family. Mustering his courage, John advanced and, with what he intended to be a reverent touch, pressed his palm against Xylar's upper arm. He ensured the pressure remained feather-light, acutely aware of Zalonian sensitivity to physical contact. Xylar's body locked up, the lilac pulsations intensified, almost unbearably bright. His resonant voice flattened into a strained croak. "Commander, what precisely are you doing?" John's smile faltered under the weight of the ambassador's gaze. "The Cathar, Ambassador, a show of respect, a gesture of friendship, intended to convey goodwill." Xylar's 3 eyes narrowed, fixing John with an intensity that made him want to vanish into the nearest access panel. "Commander, the Cathar is reserved for waste disposal crews addressing their superiors. It is an expression of condescension, a rather public declaration of my perceived inferiority." John's stomach plunged into freefall. He'd blundered catastrophically. Not only had he offended a pivotal diplomatic figure, he'd insulted an entire civilization. "Ambassador, I sincerely apologize. I misunderstood. I had assumed." Xylar cut him off, his voice gaining volume. "You assumed? You dare to presume understanding of Zalonian customs after skimming a few briefing documents? Your ignorance is extraordinary." He spun on his heel, his flowing robes flaring around him like a swirling nebula. "I demand immediate transport back to my vessel. I have no desire to linger on this citadel of cultural barbarity." Xylar swept away, leaving John stranded on the observation deck, the sharp, metallic tang of ozone and the bitter taste of humiliation hanging thick in the air. Later, confined to his quarters, John scrutinized his reflection in the polished metal of a utility panel. The face staring back wasn't the composed commander he strived to project, but a gauche, insensitive blunderer. He dragged a hand through his hair, weighed down by the magnitude of his error. The Zalonians were key allies in the impending negotiations for the Kepler 186th system, a region brimming with resources, possessing vital strategic importance. His misstep could jeopardize everything. He collapsed into his chair, the cold metal a stark reminder of the glacial chill he'd witnessed in Xylar's eyes. He had been so intent on proving himself, on showcasing human capacity for understanding and respecting alien civilizations, that he'd charged in headfirst without truly grasping the nuances of Zolonian society. He'd treated their culture like a rote lesson to be learned, rather than a living, breathing entity. And beneath the shame and the anxiety, a disquieting sensation stirred. He had been so focused on impressing, on projecting an image of enlightened acumen, that he hadn't accounted for his own sincerity. He was more concerned with being seen as respectful than actually embodying it. It was a shallow, performative act, and it had detonated in his face. He thought of Anya, his Zolonian maid. Had he unconsciously applied the same condescending approach? Had he treated her culture as something to be dissected and analyzed, rather than embraced and experienced? The thought sent a current of unease through him. He recognized a pull towards her, an attraction that was both alluring and frightening. But had he ever truly strived to know her, outside the bounds of her position and her culture? He closed his eyes, the image of Zyla's enraged face seared into his mind. He had a considerable amount to learn, and much to make amends for. He suspected that this cultural meltdown, as the station's AI succinctly put it, was only the harbinger of things to come. Return of Sarah. The automatic doors hissed open, revealing Sarah, a whirlwind of auburn hair and nervous energy. Her smile radiated pure, unadulterated joy as she spotted John. "John, I'm here!" she cried, dropping her small duffel bag with a thud and rushing towards him. He met her halfway, forcing a smile that felt stiff and unnatural on his face. "Sarah, hey, welcome back. How was the conference?" Her arms wrapped around him, a familiar embrace that now felt strangely foreign. He inhaled her scent, the same lavender perfume she'd always worn, but it failed to spark the warmth it once had. It was amazing. Cutting-edge research, brilliant minds, but mostly, "I missed you terribly," she whispered, pulling back to look at him. Her bright green eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, narrowed slightly as she scrutinized his face. "You seem different." "Different good or different bad?" he chuckled, attempting to deflect her observation. He glanced towards the kitchen, hoping Zylo wouldn't choose this moment to emerge. "Different. Distracted," Sarah replied, her gaze unwavering. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Just busy with work?" he said, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, a gesture that suddenly felt rehearsed. Zylo's been a huge help, keeping things running smoothly. As if summoned, Zylo appeared in the doorway, her iridescent skin shimmering under the soft lighting. Her antennae twitched, and she inclined her head slightly in Sarah's direction. "Welcome back, Mistress Sarah," she said, her voice a melodic chime. Sarah returned the greeting with a polite smile, but her eyes held a question. "Zylo, it's good to see you again. Everything went well while I was gone?" "Efficiently," Zylo replied, her gaze flickering towards John before quickly returning to Sarah. Master John's needs were met, and the household maintained its operational integrity. John cleared his throat. "Zylo, why don't you, finish preparing dinner? I'll show Sarah to her room." "Of course, Master John," Zylo said, turning back towards the kitchen. But before she disappeared, her multifaceted eyes lingered on John for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, a silent communication that Sarah couldn't decipher but definitely noticed. As John picked up Sarah's bag, leading her down the hallway, the silence hung heavy between them. Sarah stopped him at the door to her room. "John," she said, her voice soft but firm. "What's going on?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Nothing's going on, Sarah. Really, you're just tired from traveling." "Don't patronize me, John. I'm not stupid. There's something different between you and Zylo. A connection I don't understand." She stepped closer, her green eyes searching his. "Is it her species thing? The bonding ritual? Did something happen while I was gone?" He recoiled slightly, his face flushing. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. Zylo is just efficient and helpful. She's good at her job." "That's not what I asked," Sarah pressed, her voice hardening. She crossed her arms, studying him. "You're avoiding the question, and you're blushing." The smell of something subtly burning wafted from the kitchen. John winced. "Look, can we talk about this later? Dinner's probably burning. Let's just relax, have a nice evening. We can catch up properly tomorrow. He ushered her into the room, placed the bag on the bed, and quickly retreated, leaving Sarah standing alone, her brow furrowed in confusion and a growing sense of unease. From the hallway, she could hear the faint clatter of pans and Xylo's soft humming. The melody was unfamiliar, alien, and somehow intimate. She closed the door, the click echoing in the sudden silence. The lavender scent of her perfume felt cloying, suffocating. She felt like an intruder in her own home, the truth unveiled. The tang of xenobotanicals clung to John when he walked in from the hydroponics lab. Sarah, framed by the window and the binary glow of the moons, remained motionless. His entrance felt wrong, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Everything okay?" he ventured, a hopeful note trembling in his voice. Without turning, she countered, "Is it to you?" He advanced, the bioluminescent walls painting concern across his features. "I'm not following." She pivoted, eyes like chips of glacial ice reflecting the room's azure light. "Don't feign ignorance, John. I've seen how you look at her, and the way she returns it." His posture crumpled, a frustrated hand raked through his already unruly hair. "Sarah, not this." "Not what? Pretend our Zolonian attendant isn't the object of your affections? Saying maid feels like spitting venom." He recoiled. "It's not what you think. You're misinterpreting." "Then elucidate, because from my vantage point, it appears my husband is engaging in an emotional dalliance with a woman who boasts opalescent skin and antennae." Her voice escalated, cracking under the strain. He exhaled, the sound a weary sigh of defeat. "Zolonian connections. They operate differently. More open. What strikes you as affection, as something intimate, is often simply woven into their social tapestry. It's about building rapport, creating bonds. So that nocturnal ritual, purely cultural exchange?" A mirthless sound escaped her. "And the constant touching, the pervasive proximity, that's just custom too?" His gaze swerved away, unable to hold hers. "It's nuanced. Xylo feels isolated. She's adrift, surrounded by unfamiliarity. I strive to offer solace, security." "And my comfort, John? Does that concern you? Because I feel like I'm trapped in some ridiculous intergalactic drama." Tears stung her eyes, blurring the edges of his figure. He finally met her gaze, his expression a complex blend of contrition and supplication. "I never intended to cause you pain, Sarah. My love for you remains. However, a bond has formed with Xylo. It's distinct from ours, yet it carries its own validity." He hesitated, groping for the right expression. "On Zelos, polyamory thrives, even flourishes. Relationships can bridge species, transcend kinship. It doesn't erode the central devotion, but rather expands its reach." Sarah was rendered mute, her eyes wide with disbelief. The air hung heavy, suffocating her. This was not a mere flirtation, a fleeting attraction. He was defending, justifying, something profoundly deeper, something poised to shatter their marriage. Unseen, unheard, Xylo lingered in the shadowed opening of her quarters. The smooth, plated surface of her face revealed nothing, but the slumped antennae conveyed her anguish. Each word, each allegation, each agonizing revelation struck her like glacial splinters. Comprehension dawned. She had been naive. She had permitted herself to dream, to hope, that the rapport she shared with John resonated beyond cultural variations, that her feelings mirrored a reciprocation transcending species and societal confines. Yet Sarah's anguish stood as an undeniable testament to the devastation she had wrought. Silently, she retreated into her room, the gentle snick of the closing portal lost in the rising tension of the living area. Purpose propelled her movements as she gathered her sparse belongings. A small woven pouch, a clutch of radiant stones from her native world, a data crystal containing familial memories. She would not linger where she fomented such heartache, such disarray. She would seek another post, another family. Activating her comm device, she dispatched a terse message to John. "I am departing. Please do not pursue me." Then, embracing the cool embrace of the night air, she vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a fractured union, and a love destined to remain unrequited. The only sound was the wind's susurrus through the alien flora, whisking her away into the vast, indifferent reaches of space. An unconventional harmony. John bolted after her, his lungs protesting the sudden exertion, the crisp air of dawn a biting slap against his bare chest. He pushed through the discomfort, his gaze locked on the gravcar, a chrome teardrop now ascending at the driveway's edge. "Xylo, please!" he yelled, his voice cracking with strain. The vehicle lingered, suspended just above the dew-kissed grass. The door sighed open, revealing Xylo. Her normally vibrant turquoise complexion seemed washed out, her delicate antennae drooping like wilted flowers. She looked fragile, almost childlike. He stumbled to a stop before her, each breath a ragged gasp. "Don't leave," he pleaded, the words torn from his throat. I need you, Xylo." Her large, multifaceted eyes widened, mirroring the turmoil he felt. "John, I am perplexed." He seized her hand, the cool, polished surface a surprisingly steadying anchor. "I'm in love with you," he confessed, the admission bursting forth like a breached levee. "I know it's insane, convoluted, maybe even wrong, but it's true. My heart belongs to you." Silence descended, thick and heavy as a shroud, broken only by the thrum of the gravcar's engine and the frantic drumming of blood in John's ears. Xylo's antennae fluttered with nervous energy. "John," she started, her voice a mere breath of sound. Suddenly, the front door creaked open, and Sarah emerged, cocooned in a plush robe. She advanced slowly, her face an inscrutable mask. A wave of chilling dread washed over John. The confrontation he'd been dreading was finally here, but instead of fury, Sarah's features were etched with a quiet sorrow. Halting a few feet away, her gaze flickered between John and Xylo. "I overheard," she murmured softly. "Actually, I suspected. The way you two looked at each other, it was hard to miss." John tensed, bracing for the inevitable fallout. Sarah sighed, raking a hand through her disheveled hair. "I love you, John," she confessed, her voice laced with pain. "And I can see that your feelings for Xylo are genuine, that this isn't some fleeting obsession." He could only stare, speechless. "Sarah, Let me finish," she interjected gently. "I won't pretend this is easy. It's a knife twist. But I also know you. You wouldn't pursue this if it weren't deeply felt. And perhaps there's a solution. Maybe, just maybe, we can navigate this." Xylo's gaze darted between John and Sarah, her confusion palpable. Navigate? But Xylonian bonding rituals are intricate. And humans? "We'll chart our own course," John declared, his voice finding its strength. "We'll forge our own path." Sarah nodded, a flicker of resolve igniting in her eyes. "An unorthodox equilibrium," she mused more to herself. "We'll need to establish clear boundaries, understand each other's requirements. Above all, we need unfailing honesty." They retreated indoors, spending the next hour bathed in the apricot glow of the rising sun. The atmosphere crackled with tension, yet also with a nascent, fragile hope. They talked, truly talked, laying bare their emotions, their expectations, their deepest fears. Xylo elucidated the Xylonian concept of Kellner, the sharing of emotional resonance between individuals, transcending gender binaries. She emphasized it wasn't mere physical intimacy, but a profound merging of minds and spirits. It concerns mutual support, shared experiences, and an intertwining of destinies, she explained, her antennae swaying gently as she spoke. Sarah, in turn, detailed the deeply ingrained human concept of monogamy, the societal and emotional weight placed on marital fidelity. She admitted to her initial pangs of jealousy, but also to a growing recognition of the singular connection shared by John and Xylo. John, straddling two worlds, endeavored to bridge the chasm between them. He reaffirmed his love for Sarah, his dedication to their marriage, and his undeniable affection for Xylo. He vowed to honor their boundaries, to prioritize their emotional welfare above all else. They settled on a trial period, a time to explore the uncharted territory of their emotions and establish a novel dynamic. They would communicate with unwavering candor, devoid of judgment. They would respect each other's yearnings and needs, even when shrouded in unfamiliarity. Physical intimacy would be approached with careful consideration, always contingent on unanimous consent and mutual respect. It was a tangled, complex, and potentially catastrophic proposition. Yet, it was their proposition, an unconventional harmony forged in the crucible of love, candor, and a willingness to defy the constraints of convention. As the sun arced higher, casting elongated shadows across the living room, a delicate truce settled upon them. A long and arduous journey lay ahead, but they were prepared to undertake it together.